The maximum priority alarm sliced through the silence of Orbital Station Geneva like a blade. Captain Evelyn Evie Vance looked up from her cup of synthetic coffee, watching the red lights cascade across the command center. 20 years of navigating the stars had taught her to recognize every type of alert. This one was different. This one came from the Planetary Security Council. First, diplomatic contact, Delta level. Evie felt her stomach clench. Delta meant a Class II civilization or higher. It meant power beyond human comprehension. It meant that Earth, with its meager 12 colonized systems and propulsion technology that barely reached 50 light-years per week, was about to bow before giants. Lieutenant Marcus Webb was already standing before her, tablet extended, his face pale under the emergency lights. "Captain, you need to see this now." Evie took the device. The message spanned 17 separate files, each in a different terrestrial language. Portuguese, Mandarin, English, Arabic, Swahili. The automatic translation was too perfect, too eloquent. Whoever had sent this not only knew human languages, they knew their nuances, their histories, their vulnerabilities. She opened the main file. To the emerging species known as humanity. Greetings from the Carix Star Empire. In recognition of your recent arrival on the galactic stage, we extend a formal invitation for a ceremony of understanding on our throne world, Dominia Prime. Attendance is mandatory within 30 solar cycles, coordinates attached. May the natural hierarchy prevail. Evie reread the last line 3 times. Natural hierarchy. The words carried the weight of centuries of conquest. "Marcus, bring up everything we have on the Carix Empire. I want military history, political structure, records of contact with other species, everything." The lieutenant hesitated. "Captain, I already checked. The Galactic Council files are limited, but the summary is terrifying. Carix controls 982 star systems, 6 centuries of continuous expansion. Perfect military record." Perfect how? Perfect as in, they have never lost a single war. Every species that faced them was absorbed, exiled, or extinguished. Evie felt a chill run down her spine. She handed the tablet back to Marcus. "Gather the command team in 10 minutes. And Marcus, activate the Xenocultural Security Protocols. I want Dr. Priya Sharma on the call." As Marcus hurried out, Evie returned to the panoramic window of the command center. Earth floated below, wrapped in white clouds and blue oceans. So small, so vulnerable. 12 colonies scattered across nearby systems, defended by ships that took months to cross interstellar space. And now, an empire that dominated nearly 1,000 worlds was calling. It wasn't an invitation, it was a summons. The conference room was packed when Evie entered. Projected faces of representatives from all human colonies floated around the holographic table. General Hassan al-Rashid from Mars, Admiral Yuki Tanaka from Proxima Station, Ambassador Chioma Okafor from New Lagos, and in the center, in the sharpest projection, Dr. Priya Sharma, expert in alien civilizations and humanity's foremost authority on galactic diplomacy. "Thank you for joining so quickly," Evie began, activating the central projector. The Carix message appeared, suspended in the air like a death sentence. "We received this 20 minutes ago. I need assessments." Dr. Sharma was the first to speak. Her voice was calm, but Evie knew that tone. It was the same one she used when describing extinct civilizations. Carix operates under a philosophy of hierarchical domination. They believe the universe naturally organizes itself into layers of power. The strong lead, the weak obey. Every conquest reinforces their narrative of inevitable superiority. And the ceremonies of understanding? General al-Rashid asked. Psychological theater. Chronicles doesn't seek allies, they seek vassals. The ceremony serves to demonstrate the futility of resistance. They display war trophies, captured technologies, absorbed territories. The goal is to break the will before any conflict even begins. A heavy silence descended upon the room. Admiral Tanaka broke the ice. So that's it? We bow or we get crushed? Evie crossed her arms. Dr. Sharma, has any species ever refused the invitation? The scientist shook her head slowly. 4 species, in the last 200 years. One was economically blockaded into total bankruptcy. 2 were invaded and annexed. The 4th simply vanished from the records, entire systems wiped clean. Ambassador Okafor leaned forward. Are we talking about genocide? We're talking about capability, Sharma corrected. Chronicles doesn't need to commit genocide. Their mere existence is enough to compel compliance. No species has witnessed the trophy fleet and chosen war afterward. Evie felt all eyes turn to her. The decision wasn't really hers. It belonged to the Security Council, the colonial leaders, the billions of humans scattered across space. But in that moment, in that room, she was the face of humanity. We go, she finally said. But we go prepared. Prepared how? Al-Rashid questioned. Captain, with all due respect, our most advanced ships carry weaponry that would be 300 years obsolete to them. We are not going armed for war, Evie replied, walking to the holographic table. She zoomed in on the message, focusing on the coordinates for Dominia Prime. We are going armed with information. Dr. Sharma, I want you to compile our entire historical database. Every colonial mission, every ship launched, every technology developed in the last 500 years. That's terabytes of information, Captain. Exactly. If they want to intimidate us with trophies, we need to know what is ours and what isn't. Marcus, I want a complete analysis of the coordinates provided. Travel routes, gravitational fields, escape points. If we need to get out fast, I want options. Captain, Admiral Tanaka interrupted, are you suggesting we can face the Chronicles Empire? I'm suggesting we go with our eyes open. They invited us because they consider us weak. Maybe they're right, but I won't kneel without first understanding who I'm kneeling before. The meeting stretched for another 2 hours. Contingency plans were drawn up. Teams were assigned. The ship chosen for the mission was the Resilience, a state-of-the-art, diplomatic cruiser equipped with the best translation and analysis systems in the human fleet. When the conference ended and the holographic projections faded one by one, only Dr. Sharma remained. Evie, she said, dropping the formality, I need you to understand something. Chronicles doesn't make mistakes. They have existed for millennia. Every move is calculated. If they are summoning us now, it's because they have already assessed us and determined our place in the hierarchy. And what is our place? Sharma sighed. Below them. Always below. Evie turned off the central projector, plunging the room into shadow. Then let's go. Prove them wrong. Dr. Sharma smiled sadly. Or let's go confirm they are right. Evie, promise me one thing. If we get there and realize there is no way out, that resistance would mean our extinction. You will bow. For Earth, for the billions who depend on us. Evie, met the scientist's eyes. I promised to consider all options. But Priya, 20 years in space taught me something. The galaxy is full of species that bowed, that accepted their place. And where are they now? Alive, Sharma answered simply. Surviving, Evie corrected. There's a difference. The 30 solar cycles passed in a blur. The Resilience was prepared, fueled, equipped with every piece of defensive technology available. The crew was carefully selected. Diplomats, scientists, engineers. Not soldiers. Evie insisted on that. They were not going as conquerors. On the morning of departure, Evie stood alone in the hangar, watching the ship. 70 meters of reinforced titanium and human hope. So small compared to the descriptions of the Carrick's fleets. So fragile. Marcus appeared beside her, holding 2 synthetic coffees. Thought you might need this. Evie accepted the cup, grateful. Marcus, you have family in New York, right? Wife and 2 kids. Why? If this goes wrong, if we don't come back, make sure they know that everything we did was to give them a future. Marcus drank in silence before answering. Captain, I've served under 6 different commanders. You're the only one who truly believes we can make a difference out there. So yes, if it goes wrong, I'll make sure they know, but I'll also make sure they know we went there not as lambs, but as humans. And that means something. Evie smiled for the first time in days. Then let's go show the Empire what that means. The Resilience departed 2 hours later, propelled by antimatter engines toward the unknown. Inside, 47 humans carried the fate of billions, and in their databases, 500 years of human history waited, silent, for a purpose no one fully understood yet. In the command center, Evie watched the stars pass at superluminal speed. Somewhere ahead, 900 light-years away, the Carrick's empire awaited, with its invincible fleet, with its war trophies, with its natural hierarchy. Lieutenant Webb, she said, without taking her eyes off the stars, what is the estimated time of arrival at Dominia Prime? 18 days, Captain. Assuming we don't encounter gravitational interference. Great. That gives us 18 days to study everything about Carrick's. I want reports on every system they conquered, every species they absorbed, every war they won. If we're going into the lion's den, we need to know every tooth in the beast. Yes, ma'am. Evie finally turned to the crew. Listen up, everyone. In the coming weeks, you're going to learn things that will scare you. You'll see the power of a civilization that has existed longer than our species has recorded history. But I want you to remember one thing. We humans are not the strongest. We are not the oldest. But we have something no empire can take from us. She paused, letting the silence amplify her next words. We have the capacity to look at the impossible and ask why, not how, why. And that question, that damned human stubbornness, to question even the laws of the universe, is what brought us from the caves to the stars. So let's use it. We are going to Dominia Prime, not to bow, but to understand. And in understanding, maybe we'll find something they don't expect. The crew remained silent, but Evie saw it in their eyes. Fear, yes, but also determination, also hope. The Resilience held its course, a small point of light crossing the infinite void, carrying human audacity into the heart of the greatest empire the galaxy had ever known. And in their computers, dormant and catalogued, awaited the records of 5 cargo ships sent 300 years earlier, obsolete, forgotten, about to change everything. The 10th day of the journey brought the first disturbing revelation. Dr. Sharma summoned Evie to the Xenocultural Analysis Lab, a compact room cluttered with holographic screens displaying data on alien civilizations. The scientist was pale, eyes fixed on a three-dimensional graph floating in the center of the room. "Captain, I found a pattern in the Carix records." Evie approached, studying the intertwined lines of imperial conquests. Each color represented a different species: blue for peaceful absorption, red for military annexation, gray for extinction. There was too much gray. 23 species, Sharma continued, zooming in on specific sectors of the graph. 23 civilizations that simply ceased to exist after confrontation with Carix. They weren't absorbed. They didn't become vassals. They were erased. Erased how? That's the disturbing part. Galactic Council records are vague. They mention war, prolonged resistance, and then silence. Entire systems become inaccessible for decades. When other species finally arrive, they find sterile worlds, burned atmospheres, evaporated oceans. Evie felt a tightness in her chest, planet-annihilating weapons. Worse, systematic cleansing weapons. Carix doesn't just destroy resistance, they eliminate any trace that the civilization ever existed. Architecture demolished, satellites deorbited, even ancient radio transmissions are wiped out with targeted interference. Why do that? What's the purpose? Sharma turned off the hologram, leaving the room in shadow. To send a message, it's not enough to win. Carix needs everyone to know that resistance is not just futile. It's a path to total oblivion. You don't just lose the war. You lose history. Evie walked to the lab's observation window. In the void of space, distant stars shone indifferent to the dramas of ephemeral species. How long until Dominia Prime? 8 days. Then we have 8 days to find something that can help us. Some weakness, some pattern in Carix's defeats. Captain, I just said, Carix has never lost. Evie turned, determination renewed in her eyes. Exactly. 600 years of uninterrupted victories. That's not just improbable, it's statistically impossible, unless there's an explanation. No one wins, always. So either they are perfect, or they choose their battles very well. Dr. Sharma blinked, processing. You mean Carix might be avoiding conflicts they can't win? I mean, we need to find out. Marcus, can you join us? The lieutenant was in the hallway, tablet always in hand. Yes, Captain. I want cross-analysis. All species Carix has conquered in the last 600 years. Compare technological level, military capability, population. Look for patterns. Looking for what specifically? Looking for who they never tried to conquer. The next 48 hours turned the lab into an improvised war room. Engineers, scientists, and data analysts worked continuous shifts, scouring historical records, Galactic Council reports, and even intercepted transmissions from distant worlds. It was Chief Engineer Sarah Chen who found the first anomaly. Captain, look at this, she said, projecting a list of star systems. Carix conquered 982 systems, but there are gaps. Entire regions of space that surround Carix territory but have never been touched. Evie studied the map. Chen was right. There were pockets of independent systems, some primitive, others advanced, that remained untouched despite being literally next to imperial worlds. Why would Carix leave these systems alone? Initially, I thought they were protectorates of other galactic powers, Chen replied. But I checked. Most are unaffiliated independent systems. Some don't even have interstellar travel. Then why not conquer them? Dr. Sharma approached, examining the map. Cost versus benefit. Carix operates like an efficient expansion machine. They conquer what's worthwhile. If a system lacks strategic resources or tactical position, it's ignored. Or, Evie suggested, there's something about those systems that makes conquest unfeasible. Marcus, can you get data on planetary composition, climate, gravity of these ignored worlds? 3 hours later, the pattern emerged. High-gravity worlds, Marcus reported, displaying comparative graphs. 70% of the systems ignored by Carix have primary planets with gravity exceeding 2.5 G. The other 30% have extreme toxic environments. Methane, ammonia, intense radiation. Evie felt a flash of understanding. Carix avoids environments that require significant biological adaptation. They conquer worlds where they can operate comfortably. That makes sense, Sharma agreed. An efficient empire is an adaptable empire. If Carix needs to genetically modify troops or develop expensive life support technology for every conquest, the cost outweighs the benefit. So they have limits, Evie murmured. They are not invincible. They are calculating. The revelation should have been comforting, but as Evie returned to the command center, a question bothered her. If Carix only conquered what was worthwhile, why were they interested in Earth? 12 colonial systems, mediocre technology, resources that dozens of other worlds possessed in abundance. Unless it wasn't about Earth, it was about the humans. The 15th day brought the first sight of Dominia Prime. The Resilience emerged from superluminal space 2 million kilometers from the Carix capital system. And what Evie saw took her breath away. Orbital stations the size of moons surrounded the main planet. Each bristled with weapons, railguns, the length of skyscrapers, missile batteries that could sterilize continents, energy shields that made the surrounding space glow with ultraviolet radiation. My God, Marcus whispered. Station count, Evie ordered, her voice firm despite the fear growing in her stomach. 147 orbital defense stations. Also, detecting 382 destroyers on patrol. Captain, there is more firepower in this single system than in the entire human colonial fleet. Evie swallowed hard. And the human fleet is spread across 12 systems. This is just the capital's defense. Receiving communication hail, announced Communications Officer Lieutenant Kira Osman. Universal channel. Automatic translation active. Put it on the speaker. A deep, digitally modulated voice echoed through the command center. Human vessel Resilience. Welcome to the Dominia system. You are cleared for controlled approach. Follow the transmitted navigation coordinates. Any deviation will result in immediate deactivation of your propulsion systems. The message wasn't hostile. It was worse. It was indifferent, like a guard informing rules to an insignificant visitor. Confirm receipt, Evie told Kira. Inform them we will comply with protocols. The journey to Dominia Prime's orbit took 6 hours. 6 hours traversing a labyrinth of military stations, each tracking the Resilience with sensors powerful enough to map every bolt on the human ship. They are scanning us completely, Chen reported from the engineering bay. Energy readings, hull composition, armament. They know everything about us now. Let them, Evie replied. We have nothing to hide. Finally, Dominia Prime, filled the main view screen. The planet was a masterpiece of planetary engineering. Entire continents covered by geometric megacities, oceans contained in perfectly circular reservoirs. Even the clouds seemed to follow ordered patterns, manipulated by climate towers dotting the equator. "It's beautiful," Sharma admitted. "In a terrifying way." "It's control," Evie corrected. "Total control. Carix doesn't just conquer worlds, they reshape them in their image." A second transmission arrived. "Human delegation. Designated docking at Ceremonial Station Alpha. Transport will be provided to the surface. Ceremony of Understanding begins in 20 standard galactic hours. Mandatory presence of human leadership and primary advisors." Evie looked at her team. Marcus, tense but focused. Chen, checking systems for the 10th time. Sharma, reviewing notes on Carrick's diplomatic protocol. Kira, monitoring communication channels. "All right," she said. "We made it this far. Now comes the hard part. Sharma, review the greeting protocols with me. Marcus, I want you armed, with every historical data point we have. Chen, keep the ship at maximum readiness. If we need to leave fast, I want the engines warmed up." "Captain," Chen hesitated, "the defense systems here will destroy us before we even activate the antimatter engines." "I know, but I want options anyway." Docking at Ceremonial Station Alpha was smooth. When the pressure seals connected and the Resilience's access door opened, Evie was the first to step out. On the other side, something awaited that chilled her blood. A Carix. The creature was 3 meters tall, its humanoid body covered in chitin plates that shimmered with iridescent shades of blue and purple. 4 arms, each ending in 6-fingered hands. An angular face with compound eyes that reflected light like faceted gems. When it spoke, the voice came from a vocal organ in its chest, deep and resonant. "Captain Evelyn Vance, I am Coordinator Vecton. I will serve as your liaison during the Ceremony of Understanding." Evie forced herself to maintain eye contact. The compound eyes were disconcerting, impossible to tell where Vecton was truly looking. "Coordinator Vecton, we appreciate the hospitality of the Carix Empire." "Hospitality implies choice," Vecton replied, emotionlessly. "You were summoned. Comply, and there is a place for humanity in the galactic order. Resist, and there will be no humanity." The threat was delivered with the same indifference as a weather report. "Understood," Evie said, refusing to show fear. "We are ready for the ceremony." Vecton turned, moving with unnatural grace. "Follow. The Emperor awaits." As they walked through the station corridors, Evie observed everything. Polished metal walls displaying holograms of Imperial conquests, Carix soldiers in black armor, motionless as statues. Display cases showing artifacts of extinct species, catalogued as museum relics. "Sharma," she whispered, "they are psyching us out." "Yes. Everything here serves to reinforce the futility of resistance. Look." Sharma discreetly pointed to a hologram showing a space battle. Thousands of small ships being systematically destroyed by a single Carix fleet. "The Theta Seti Rebellion," Vectan said, without turning around. 17 colonial systems united against the Empire 200 years ago. The war lasted 6 months. No survivors. "You can hear our whispers?" Marcus asked, surprised. "I can hear your accelerated heartbeat, human. I can smell the chemical fear emanating from your pores. All who come here feel the same. There is no shame in it. There is only reality." They finally reached a transport chamber, an ovoid capsule of crystalline material large enough to hold the human delegation. "This will take you to the surface," Vecthan explained. "The Imperial Amphitheater is on the primary continent. There, along with delegations from 53 other species, you will witness the true extent of Carrick's power." As they entered the capsule, Evie felt the weight of the situation fall completely onto her shoulders. 53 species, all summoned to witness humanity's submission. The descent to Dominia Prime was dizzying. The capsule passed through layers of manipulated atmosphere, past fleets of ships in perfect formations, past towers that reached into space, past cities that stretched beyond the horizon. "It's bigger than Earth," Chen murmured. "The whole planet is bigger. 0.9 g gravity, but the surface area is 40% larger than Earth's." "Planetary engineering," Sharma confirmed. "Carrick's wasn't born here. They reshaped the world to their needs." The capsule landed on a platform surrounded by crystal gardens. Alien plants grew in mathematical patterns, pruned into perfect geometric shapes. Even nature was controlled. Vecthan guided them through polished stone avenues to a monumental amphitheater. The structure was circular, with descending steps leading to a central arena. But the real spectacle was above. The ceiling was a transparent dome, and through it, Evie could see space. And in the rows of seats, creatures of dozens of different species watched in oppressive silence. "Take your seats," Vecthan instructed, indicating a section marked with human symbols. "The ceremony will begin shortly." Evie sat down, her team around her. Across the arena, an insectoid creature with a green carapace watched her with multifaceted eyes. Further left, something that looked like a colony of bioluminescent fungi pulsed softly. Further on, blue-skinned humanoids conversed in ultrasonic clicks. 53 species, all there to witness. "Captain," Marcus whispered, "none of them look happy to be here." "Because they aren't," Sharma replied quietly. "They are here for the same reason we are. Fear." The amphitheater lights dimmed. An absolute silence descended. And then, from the center of the arena, the floor began to open. A platform emerged from the hole, and upon it, a figure that made Evie forget to breathe. The Carrick's Emperor was colossal. 4 meters tall, armored body, with black chitin plates, inlaid with crystals that shone like stars. 6 arms, each bearing symbols of conquest. And the face, if it could be called that, was a mask of petrified features, eyes like luminous abysses. When he spoke, the voice echoed not only in the amphitheater, but inside Evie's mind, translated by some telepathic technology. "Welcome, young species, to the ceremony of understanding. Today you will learn your place in the cosmos, and you will understand why resistance is empty." The Emperor raised one of his hands. "Let me show you the truth of power." The space above the amphitheater began to tear. Reality ripped like fabric. Evie watched, mesmerized, as a dimensional rift opened above the amphitheater. It wasn't a conventional portal. There were no bright edges or smooth visual distortions. It was as if the universe simply decided that here, at this specific point in space-time, it no longer needed to exist coherently. Through the rift, she saw something impossible. Ships, thousands of them. "Dimensional storage," Sharma whispered next to Evie, her voice trembling. "It's pure theory for us. They have completely mastered it." The first ships began to emerge. Each one was different, representing unique alien architectures. There were organic ships that looked like living creatures, pulsing with bioluminescence, crystalline constructions that refracted light in impossible spectra, mechanical megastructures miles long, bristling with silent weapons. Evie saw the effect on the other delegates. The insectoid creature had recoiled in its seat, antennae flattened against its skull. The blue humanoids were hugging each other, trembling. Even the fungal colony had ceased its pulsations, becoming opaque and motionless. Terror. Universal terror. "Behold," the Emperor's voice boomed, not just audible, but felt, vibrating through their bones. "The trophy fleet. Every vessel here represents a civilization that chose arrogance over wisdom, that believed it could defy the natural order." Holograms projected around the amphitheater, showing ancient battles, ships of the displayed species fighting desperately against the Karik's military machine. Always the same conclusion: defeat, capture, subjugation. "The Krell of Lesser Andromeda," the Emperor continued, gesturing toward a disc-shaped ship covered in bioluminescent runes. 3 centuries of war, 26 contested systems. In the end, nothing remained of their civilization except this monument ship, preserved as a reminder of their stubbornness. Evie felt Marcus stiffen beside her. "Captain, this is genocide. He's admitting genocide, and he doesn't even care." "Silence," she whispered. "We need to see everything." The Emperor proceeded, ship after ship, story after story, each one a lesson in futility. The Drekai, who fought for 2 centuries before being extinguished. The harmonists of Proxima, whose song ships were silenced forever. The collective minds of Titania, whose cybernetic bodies now decorated imperial museums. 47 civilizations represented here, the Emperor proclaimed. 47 lessons for the wise, 47 warnings for the foolish. The dimensional rift began to close, ships disappearing back into impossible storage, but then the Emperor raised all 6 hands. "But there is one trophy above all others, an enemy that tested us like no other. A war that cost not decades, but centuries, that consumed not millions, but billions of Karik's lives." The amphitheater fell into absolute silence. Even the artificial wind seemed to have stopped. "Allow me to present," the Emperor's voice dropped to an almost reverent tone, "the crown jewels. The greatest military trophy in our history." The rift opened again, but this time, what emerged made Evie sit up straight in her chair. 5 ships, massive, cylindrical, with rotating sections along their length. "No," she whispered. "It can't be." The ships were 5 kilometers each, titanium aluminum hulls with markings faded by time, observation windows arranged in geometric patterns along the rotating sections, and on the bow of each, almost erased by 3 centuries of exposure to the vacuum, familiar symbols: the flag of Earth, the emblem of the initial colonial fleet. Next to Evie, Dr. Sharma had gone white as a sheet. "Evie, those are the Delta Generation cargo ships," Evie finished, her voice lifeless. "Launched in 2124, declared lost in 21 and 27 when we developed faster warp drives." The Emperor continued his speech, oblivious to the growing shock in the human section. "These 5 vessels belonged to the most relentless enemy we have ever faced. The war lasted 300 years. Yes, 300. They attacked us in coordinated waves across 40 systems. Their tactics were incomprehensible. Their ships, even when critically damaged, kept fighting. When we captured one, the others adapted instantly." Evie felt something rising in her chest, something between horror and absolute disbelief. "We lost millions," the Emperor continued. "Entire stations were destroyed, fleets decimated. It was the longest and costliest war in our history. And when we finally defeated them, when we captured the last of these warrior ships, we discovered the terrible truth." The Emperor paused dramatically. "The enemy that nearly destroyed us had no crew. They were autonomous war machines, combat artificial intelligences from a race we did not identify until recently." Marcus was frantically checking his tablet, cross-referencing visible serial numbers on the ship's hulls with Earth's historical records. "Captain, confirmed. Those are the Delta ships: NSC Abundance, NSC Providence, NSC Harvest, NSC Frontier, and NSC Legacy. Long-range cargo transports launched to establish trade routes with the first colonies." "Carrying what?" Evie asked, though she already knew the answer. "Agricultural equipment, tractors, irrigation systems, water purifiers, basic terraforming machinery." "And then it happened?" Evie started laughing. It wasn't a polite laugh. It wasn't nervous laughter. It was genuine, deep laughter, which started as a tremor in her shoulders and exploded into loud guffaws that echoed through the silent amphitheater. Dr. Sharma stared at her, shocked. Marcus tried to contain his own surprise, but then, as the absurd reality of what they were witnessing fully hit them, they started too. Sarah Chen was next, laughter escaping in uncontrollable snorts. Then, Kira Osman. One by one, the entire human delegation collapsed into hysterical laughter. The effect was immediate and devastating. The Emperor stood motionless. The alien delegations looked between the humans and the Emperor, confused and terrified. Vekthan, standing on a nearby platform, stepped forward, chitin plates vibrating with what could only be fury. "Silence," the Emperor's voice thundered, telepathically amplified until it hurt their ears. "You dare mock in the presence of the crown jewels? You dare laugh at our greatest military achievement?" Evie forced herself to control herself, wiping tears of laughter from her eyes. She stood up, her legs still shaking from laughing so hard, and when she spoke, her voice carried a mix of amusement and disbelief that turned every word into an involuntary insult. "Imperial Majesty," she began, making an exaggerated bow, "forgive our reaction, but I need to clarify something about your greatest enemy, about the war that lasted 300 years and cost millions of lives." The amphitheater fell into absolute silence. Evie could feel thousands of alien eyes fixed on her. "Those ships," she continued, pointing to the 5 cylindrical vessels floating above, "are not warships. They never were. They are autonomous cargo transports, space trucks, sent out alone 300 years ago because we developed better engines, and it wasn't worth bringing them back." Vekthan leaned forward. "A lie. These ships fought with incomparable ferocity. They destroyed entire fleets because they were programmed to defend their cargo," Evie explained, fighting another wave of laughter. "They were carrying expensive agricultural equipment, tractors, irrigation systems. The onboard AI had a single directive: deliver the cargo intact to the destination. If attacked, defend until the threat was neutralized." Dr. Sharma stood up beside Evie, tablet in hand. "Majesty, I can confirm. The specifications for these ships are in our historical archives. NSC Abundance, NSC Providence, NSC Harvest, NSC Frontier, and NSC Legacy. Launched in 2124 from Earth. Maximum speed, 0.3 light-years per year. Armament, automated defense systems against space debris and minor pirates. Crew, 0. Cargo, 1,000 tons of agricultural and terraforming equipment each. Impossible, the Emperor said, but there was uncertainty in his voice. The war lasted 300 years. The tactics were sophisticated, coordinated. Marcus stood up, displaying data on his tablet for the delegations to see. The ships operated on convoy protocol, programmed to maintain formation and share threat data. If one was attacked, the others converged to assist, not for military strategy, for route optimization and mutual cargo protection. Evie saw the exact moment the truth hit the Emperor. The chitin plates on his face trembled. The abyssal eyes blinked rapidly. It was a moment of total vulnerability. "You fought for 300 years, Evie said, and this time her voice carried no humor, only deep disbelief. Against delivery trucks. You lost millions of soldiers. You destroyed fleets. You spent unimaginable resources, all to capture 5 ships loaded with tractors and water purifiers." The silence that followed was unlike anything Evie had ever experienced. It wasn't the silence of fear or respect. It was the silence of cosmic embarrassment. Vecthan was the first to react. "Prove it. Prove these are your ships." Sarah Chen was already working, connecting her equipment to the amphitheater's display systems. Every colonial ship has a unique identifier etched into the hull. Not visible to the naked eye, but detectable with precision scanning. "If you allow me access to your sensors, I can show you." The Emperor gestured, and holograms appeared showing detailed scans of the 5 ships. Chen worked quickly, zooming in on specific sections of the hull. There, hidden beneath 3 centuries of micrometeorite damage, were the identification codes, Earth serial numbers, certifications from the initial colonial authority, even absurdly, safety inspection certificates dated 2123. NSC Abundance, serial number TCF 2124001, Chen read. Launched from the Lagrange 2 orbital shipyard in March 2124. Planned destination, Ross 154b colony. Status, lost in transit, presumed destroyed by engine failure. She moved to the next ship, NSC Providence, serial number TCF 2124002, NSC Harvest, TCF 2124003, NSC Frontier, TCF 2124004, NSC Legacy, TCF 2124005. All part of the same flotilla, all declared lost when we developed Mark III warp propulsion in 2127, and they became too obsolete to be worth recovering. Evie watched the alien delegations. Some began to whisper among themselves. Others remained in shock. A creature resembling an octopus, floating in a water tank, had changed color 3 times, going from pale blue to vibrant purple. "And the cargo?" an alien voice asked from across the amphitheater. What did they carry that justified such aggressive defense? Marcus displayed cargo manifests. Abundant ship, 200 industrial-class terraforming tractors, 100 atmospheric purifiers, irrigation systems for 50,000 hectares. Providence ship, automated mining equipment, geological processors, portable fusion generators, harvest ship. He continued, each item more mundane than the last. Agricultural equipment, construction machinery, colonization tools, nothing military, nothing that justified a 300-year war. The Emperor remained motionless for long minutes. Then slowly, he lowered all 6 hands. "Advisors," he said, his voice lacking its former grandeur. "Private chamber. Now?" Vecthan and a dozen other high-ranking Kariks followed the Emperor out of the arena. The alien delegations immediately erupted into an uproar. Voices, clicks, whistles, and sounds Evie had no reference for filled the amphitheater. The insectoid creature approached the human section, antennae trembling. Is it true? Carrick's fought 300 years against farm machinery? Evie nodded, still processing the insanity of the situation. Apparently so. And you just sent those ships away? Alone? Unescorted? They were too slow. When we developed better engines, the fuel cost to bring them back wasn't worth it. So we reprogrammed them to continue alone, deliver the cargo, and either self-destruct or be recovered by the colonies eventually. The insectoid made a sound the translator identified as hysterical laughter. You have no idea what you've just done, humans. Carrick's built their entire empire on the threat of these crown jewels. Stories of how they defeated the most powerful enemy in the galaxy. And you just revealed that enemy was agricultural space junk. Sharma approached Evie. Captain, we need to be very careful now. We publicly humiliated the Emperor in front of dozens of species. This can go two ways. Either Carrick's admits the mistake and tries to save face, or they eliminate us to silence the truth. And which do you think is more likely? Sharma looked to where the Emperor had disappeared. Honestly, I don't know. Carrick's has never faced public humiliation like this. There is no precedent. Evie sat down again. Her mind working quickly. They had revealed the truth, yes. But now they were in the heart of enemy territory, surrounded by military power sufficient to sterilize Earth 10 times over. Marcus Chen, I want both of you to return to the Resilience. Discreetly, prepare the ship for emergency departure. Captain, they won't let us leave, Chen protested. I know, but I want options. I always want options. The two officers left, blending into the agitated crowd of alien delegates. Evie stayed with Sharma and Kira, watching the chaos unfold around them. A blue-skinned humanoid approached, its voice whispering. You have condemned yourselves, humans. Carrick's does not forgive humiliation. Then they shouldn't have based their empire on a lie, Evie replied calmly. The humanoid backed away, shocked by the audacity. 40 minutes passed. The amphitheater had devolved into dozens of separate conversations. Species that had never spoken before now huddled together, sharing disbelief. Elena noticed something shifting. The atmosphere of fear that permeated the place was dissolving, replaced by something far more dangerous. Hope. Finally, the Emperor returned. He looked smaller somehow, not physically, but in presence. The aura of invincibility had cracks. Delegations, he began, and his voice no longer echoed telepathically. It was just a voice, loud but normal. The ceremony is concluded. Return to your vessels. There will be future communications regarding political alignments. Elena noted the absence of threats, of power assertions. The Emperor simply turned and left, Vecthan and the councillors following in silence. The crowd began to disperse, but Elena saw it in the eyes of the other species. Something had fundamentally changed. The facade of Carrick's invincibility had fallen, and all because of 5 delivery trucks sent 300 years earlier. As they returned to the transport shuttle, Saranya whispered, Eleanor, what did we just do? Eleanor looked one last time at the 5 ships suspended in the Dominia Prime sky, obsolete and absurd in their accidental glory. I think, she answered slowly, we just brought down an empire without firing a single shot. The trip back to Ceremonial Station Alpha was tense and silent. Elena kept her expression neutral. but her mind was working at maximum speed, calculating probabilities, assessing risks. Vectan accompanied them, but the Carrick's coordinator was also quiet. Chitin plates, occasionally trembling in patterns Elena had learned to recognize as anxiety. When they reached the docking bay, where the Resilience awaited, Vectan finally spoke. "Captain Vasquez, you will remain in orbit for 72 hours. The Imperial Council needs to deliberate on the implications of what has been revealed." "Implications?" Elena asked, keeping her tone level. "We revealed the truth. Our cargo transports were mistaken for warships. It's a misunderstanding, nothing more." Vectan turned completely to face her. His compound eyes reflected the station lights like shattered prisms. "You don't understand what you've done. Carrick's authority, our ability to maintain order across 982 systems, is based on respect through demonstrated force. The crown jewels were living proof that even the most formidable enemy could be defeated. And now everyone knows the most formidable enemy was farm trucks." Saranya finished. Vectan did not deny it. "Exactly. And now species who accepted their place in the hierarchy out of fear of that victory will question it. They will wonder what other victories might have been exaggerated. They will wonder if Carrick's is truly invincible." Eleanor felt a flash of understanding. "You're afraid of rebellion?" "We are afraid of chaos," Vectan corrected. "An empire is not maintained by military force alone. It is maintained by a consensus of inevitability. When that consensus breaks, when species start to believe they can win, the cost of maintaining order becomes unsustainable." "So what happens now?" Vectan hesitated, and Elena realized that for the first time she was seeing genuine emotion in a Carrick's. Uncertainty. "I don't know," he admitted. "In 600 years, we have never faced this." The docking bay door opened, revealing Marcus and Chen waiting on the other side. Elena stepped through, but before entering the Resilience, she turned back to Vectan. "Coordinator, one question. Why did you never analyze the interior of the ships? In 300 years, did you never check the cargo?" Vectan was silent for a long moment. "Because they were trophies, monuments to our victory. To open them would be to profane the achievement. And because, honestly, we never questioned it. Why would we question it? We won. That was enough." "Arrogance," Elena said softly. "You were defeated by your own arrogance." Vectan did not reply. He simply turned and left. Inside the Resilience, the crew gathered in the command center. Chen had been monitoring all communications in Dominia Prime orbit, and the news was simultaneously encouraging and terrifying. "Captain, the information has already leaked. Unencrypted transmissions are being sent from at least 20 different diplomatic vessels. The species present at the ceremony are telling their homeworlds." Marcus zoomed in on the star map. "We're detecting increased communication activity across 340 Carrick systems. Long, encrypted transmissions, but at a much higher volume than normal." "Panic," Saranya diagnosed. "Local governors contacting the capital. Vassals verifying the story's veracity. The Empire is on high alert." Eleanor sat in the command chair, fingers drumming on the armrest. "Kira, can you intercept any open communications?" The communications officer worked at her console, filtering signals. "Captain, there are transmissions on public channels. Some species are literally broadcasting openly. They want everyone to know." "Put it on the loudspeaker. Automatic translations." The command center filled with alien voices, each in different stages of shock, anger, or jubilation. A hissing voice, translated as belonging to the Sithari. Confirmed. The humans provided documentation. The crown jewels are primitive cargo transports. Chronicles lied for centuries about their greatest victory. A deep, resonant voice from the Corthan. If Chronicles fought farm machinery for 300 years, how much of their real power is illusion? How much of our submission is based on manufactured fear? A melodic, almost sung voice from the harmonists, who are thought to be extinct. Kin in exile, listen. The empire that broke us is not invincible. It was humiliated by obsolete technology from a species that barely reached the stars. Perhaps our time of silence is ending. Elena muted the audio. The silence in the command center was heavy. Saranya, honest analysis. What have we done here? The scientist removed her glasses, cleaning them as she organized her thoughts. We destroyed the fundamental narrative of the Chronicles Empire, not with weapons, but with truth. Chronicles is powerful, yes. Militarily superior to us and most known species. But their true power came from the belief that they were unbeatable, that even the fiercest resistance eventually fails. And now? Now everyone knows Chronicles can be fooled, that they can spend centuries and immense resources fighting the wrong threat. That doesn't make them weak, but it makes them fallible, and fallibility breeds doubt. Doubt breeds questioning. Questioning breeds resistance. Marcus crossed his arms. So we inadvertently started a galactic revolution? No, Elena corrected. We exposed a lie. What the other species do with that information is their choice. Chen raised her hand, timidly. Captain, there's another question. If Chronicles feels threatened, if they believe their authority is crumbling, what is the probability they will try to suppress the information by force? You mean eliminate us? Elena translated. Yes, us and anyone else who spreads the story. The thought had crossed Elena's mind since they left the amphitheater. The Resilience was surrounded by enough firepower to vaporize the ship in milliseconds. They were completely at the mercy of Chronicles. Marcus, status of defensive systems? Shields at maximum capacity, but against the weapons here, they'd last maybe 10 seconds. Engines warmed up, but it would take 3 minutes to enter superluminal speed. Time we don't have. So if Chronicles decides to silence us, there is no escape. No, Captain. Elena looked through the observation window at Dominia Prime below. The perfectly ordered planet. Every continent a masterpiece of engineering. Every ocean geometrically contained. Absolute control. Except now, that control was cracking. The next 72 hours were the longest of Elena's life. The Resilience crew maintained continuous shifts, monitoring communications, tracking ship movements, looking for any sign of hostile intent. On the second day, the situation began to escalate. Captain, detecting military mobilization in System Theta 9, Marcus reported 3 Chronicles corvettes on an interception route for a Sithari commercial fleet. Hostilities? Not yet. Looks like intimidation. The Sithari were openly broadcasting about the Crown Jewels incident. The corvettes are likely there to enforce communications silence. In the following hours, similar patterns emerged in dozens of systems. Chronicles was trying to contain the information through military presence, but it was like trying to hold water with your hands. The more they tried to suppress, the more the species transmitted. On the third day, something unexpected happened. Captain, receiving a directed transmission. Kira announced. Private channel, heavy encryption, origin, Dominia Prime surface. Sender identifies as Counselor Tacton, second in command of the Imperial Council. Elena straightened up. Put it on the main screen. Audio only, for now. The voice that emerged was feminine, or at least, the translator chose feminine. Tones, calm, calculated, very different from the Emperor's grandiosity. Captain Vasquez, thank you for accepting this communication. I speak on behalf of a faction within the Imperial Council that believes the current crisis requires unconventional solutions. Counselor Tacton, I'm listening. The revelation about the crown jewels has created systemic instability. 162 systems have already reported protests. 34 governors have requested additional troops to maintain order. 12 systems have cut communications completely, presumably preparing declarations of independence. Elena exchanged glances with Saranya. 12 systems, an empire beginning to crumble. And what solution does your faction propose, Counselor? Long pause. When Tacton spoke again, there was something in her voice that Elena identified as weary hope. Transformation. The imperial model of control through demonstrated fear is unsustainable after your revelation. We need a new paradigm, and we believe that humans, inadvertently or not, have demonstrated the viability of an alternative. Alternative? Your model of expansion. Decentralized federation. Autonomous colonies, united by mutual benefit, not by subjugation. Free trade instead of forced tribute. Collective protection instead of military domination. Elena felt her stomach tighten. Tacton was proposing nothing less than the complete dismantling of the Karix Empire. Counselor, with all due respect, why would a member of the Imperial Council advocate for the dissolution of her own empire? Because the alternative is violent collapse. Captain, I have held this position for 120 years. I have seen the empire expand, conquer, absorb. But I have also seen the cost, constant rebellions, resentful populations, ever-increasing resources dedicated to suppressing dissent instead of promoting prosperity. Tacton sighed, a sound the translator rendered as deep weariness. Karix was founded on a philosophy of natural hierarchy. The strong lead, the weak follow. But the universe does not operate in static hierarchies. Species evolve, technologies advance. What is strong today may be obsolete tomorrow. Your people demonstrated this perfectly. Our obsolete cargo ships, Elena murmured. Exactly. Technology you discarded as useless almost destroyed our empire. Not by being superior, but by being persistent and misunderstood. How many other species have similar potential that we underestimated? How many allies could Karix have instead of resentful vassals? Saranya leaned in, whispering to Elena, "She's either sincere, or it's the most elaborate trap ever conceived." Elena nodded, returning her attention to Tacton. "Counselor, assuming your proposal is genuine, what would be humanity's role in this transformation?" "Guidance, mediation. You have no history of confrontation with Karix. You carry no resentment of conquest. You can serve as a neutral bridge between an empire that needs to change and species that demand change." "And the Emperor? Does he agree with this?" Tense silence. "The Emperor is reluctant, but he is not stupid. He understands the numbers. He understands that suppressing rebellion on a galactic scale is mathematically impossible. Some councillors advocate for an extreme demonstration of force, destroying rebel systems as an example. Genocide, Elena said, her voice hard. Yes, my faction and I believe that path would only accelerate total collapse. We would prefer controlled transformation to chaotic disintegration. Eleanor looked at her team. Marcus looked skeptical. Chen, hopeful. Saranya, analytical as always. Kira maintained a neutral expression, but her fingers danced nervously over the console. Counselor, I need to discuss this with my team and with the Council of Earth. 72 hours is not enough for a decision of this magnitude. I understand. But Captain, time is of the essence. With every hour that passes, more systems become destabilized. If we don't offer a viable alternative quickly, violent factions on both sides will fill the vacuum. How much time do we have? Weeks. Perhaps less. The transmission ended, leaving the command center in heavy silence. Marcus was the first to speak. Captain, this could be a trap. Tacthan might be luring us into a position of responsibility that Carix later uses to blame us for any resulting chaos. Or, Chen countered, it could be our only chance to avoid a galactic war. If Carix collapses violently, how many billions die in the resulting conflicts? Saranya removed her glasses again. A gesture Elena had learned meant deep thought. The real question is humanity ready for this role? We have 12 colonies and inferior technology to almost everyone in the galaxy. How can we mediate the transformation of an empire that controls 1,000 systems? Elena walked to the observation window, looking at the stars beyond Dominia Prime. We can't. Not alone. But maybe we don't have to. Saranya, how many species were in that amphitheater? 53, including us. And how many of them likely desire change in how the galaxy is governed? Saranya considered. Considering most are forced Carix vassals? Probably all of them. Then it wouldn't be human mediation. It would be a multi-species coalition. We just start the conversation. Marcus straightened up. Captain, are you suggesting we form a galactic alliance? I'm suggesting we offer an alternative. Carix can transform into a voluntary confederation, or it can face violent fragmentation. Our offer is not human aid. It's a structure for peaceful transition. Eleanor turned to face the team. Marcus, I want you to prepare a communication for Earth. Quantum transmission, maximum security. We need authorization from the Council to proceed. Chen, compile all data on human federal structure, how we govern colonies, how we resolve disputes, how we maintain cohesion without subjugation. Saranya, I want a list of all species present at the ceremony. We need to know who our potential allies are. And me, Captain? Kira asked. You will open a channel with Councillor Tacthan. We will need much more information about Carix's internal structure before we can help transform it. The team dispersed, each to their tasks. Elena remained at the observation window, watching the Imperial planet below. They came to Dominia Prime, expecting subjugation, expecting to bow before overwhelming power. Instead, they accidentally dethroned that power and were now being asked to help build something new from the ruins. History, Elena thought, has a wicked sense of humor. A soft alert sounded. Marcus returned, tablet in hand. Captain, the response from Earth has arrived. Direct quantum transmission from the Security Council. Elena took the tablet, reading quickly. The words were formal, but the message was clear. Proceed with caution. Diplomatic authority granted, additional resources being mobilized. Earth trusts your judgment, Captain Vasquez. Elena smiled sadly. Trust was comforting, But it also meant that responsibility for any failure would fall entirely on her shoulders. "All right," she said, returning the tablet. "Let's change a galaxy. What could go wrong?" Marcus laughed, but it was a nervous laugh. In the depths of Dominia Prime, decisions were being made that would shape the future of trillions, and in orbit above, a human ship containing 47 people carried the hope that peaceful change was possible, all because 300 years ago, someone decided that recovering 5 slow cargo trucks wasn't worth the fuel. The meeting took place in neutral territory, not on Dominia Prime, where the Imperial presence would intimidate, not on Earth, too small to host delegations from 50 species, but at Aurora Station, an independent trading post on the border between Karic space and free territories. Elena had been to Aurora before, years ago during a trade mission. The station was chaotic, vibrant, a melting pot of alien cultures, trading freely. Now, as the Resilience docked, she noticed changes, more warships on patrol, palpable tension in traffic control communications. The galaxy was on the brink. "Captain, representatives from 42 species have confirmed attendance," Marcus reported. 11 declared neutrality and will observe from a distance. Carix is sending Councillor Tacton and 5 other council members. And security? Aurora agreed to a demilitarized zone. All ships leave weaponry on standby. Violations result in immediate expulsion. Elena nodded, adjusting her diplomatic uniform. Deep blue with the Earth insignia embroidered on the chest. Simple, but dignified. "Saranya, final review. What absolutely can't we promise?" The scientist consulted her notes. "We cannot guarantee that all Karic systems will accept the transition peacefully. We cannot promise human military technology. We don't have much to offer. We cannot force Karics to immediately return conquered territories. That would cause logistical chaos. And what can we offer? Structure, experience with federative government, neutral mediation, and most importantly, hope that change is possible without bloodshed." The conference room at Aurora was vast, designed to accommodate diverse alien physiologies: water tanks for aquatic species, low-pressure chambers for gaseous beings, high-gravity platforms for Corthan, and in the center, a circular table where no species sat in a position of greater importance. Elena entered with Saranya and Marcus. The room was already crowded. Alien representatives talked in groups, the atmosphere tense but controlled. She recognized some from the amphitheater on Dominia Prime, the insectoid creature of the Cethari, the blue humanoids of the Corthan, the floating octopus of the Oceanian. And then, the Carix entered. Councillor Tacton led the delegation. She was smaller than the Emperor, but still imposing. 8 feet tall, chitin plates in shades of blue-green instead of imperial black. 4 arms, 2 of them carrying holographic tablets. Compound eyes that constantly scanned the room. The silence that fell was absolute. Tacton walked directly to Elena, stopping at a respectful distance. "Captain Vasquez, thank you for organizing this meeting." Elena extended her hand, a human gesture of greeting. Tacton observed for a moment before extending one of her arms, imitating the movement. The grip was delicate, cold chitin to the touch. "Counselor, I hope we can find a way forward that benefits everyone." "As do I," Tacton replied. She turned to the assembly. "Delegates, I know my presence here causes discomfort. I represent an empire that has caused suffering to many of you. I do not ask for forgiveness. only an opportunity for honest discussion about the future. Asathari stood up, antennae vibrating with agitation. Discussion? Carrick's never discussed, they only ordered. Why should we believe the change is genuine? Because the alternative is total war, Tacton replied without hesitation. And in that war, everyone loses. Yes, Carrick's has superior military power, but we cannot occupy 1,000 systems against coordinated resistance. The cost in lives, resources, and time would be catastrophic for all involved. A liquid voice translated from sonar bubbles of the Oceanian. So Carrick's offers peace because war is inconvenient, not out of principle? Tacton turned to the aquatic creature. I am pragmatic, not idealistic. Yes, I offer change because it is necessary. But that does not make the offer less genuine. An empire based on unsustainable fear is doomed. I prefer orderly transformation to chaotic collapse. Elena stepped forward. Delegates, may I suggest we save accusations for later? We are here to build a future, not to relitigate the past. The question is, what kind of galactic structure do we want? She spent the next 2 hours facilitating discussions. It was not easy. Centuries of resentment did not disappear for convenience. Species that had been conquered wanted reparations. Carrick's resisted the total loss of control. Smaller species feared being crushed in any new order. It was Dr. Saranya who finally proposed a viable structure. What if we use a layered model, a galactic confederation as an umbrella organization? It does not govern directly, but facilitates trade, resolves disputes, and coordinates defense against external threats. Within it, regional alliances based on geography and shared interests. Akorthan leaned forward. And Carrick's? What would their role be? Saranya looked at Tacton. Carrick's becomes an equal member, not the supreme leader, but a partner. Their systems can choose to remain in the Confederation or seek independence. Carrick's military force can serve as a peacekeeping force for the Confederation, provided it is under multi-species civilian command. Tacton considered. Interesting proposal, but it will require massive internal reform. The Emperor cannot remain as an absolute dictator. Then transform the Empire into a republic, Marcus suggested. Maintain the administrative structure, but add democratic representation, an elected council instead of imperial appointment. The discussion continued for hours, then days. Slowly, a structure began to emerge. Not perfect, full of compromises and concessions from all sides, but viable. On the 5th day of negotiations, an important breakthrough occurred. Tacton stood up, commanding the assembly's attention. I have an announcement. The Emperor, after consultation with the full council, has agreed to abdicate absolute power. He will propose a constitutional reform transforming the Empire into a federal republic. Elections for the governing council will take place within 6 standard galactic months. Stunned silence. Then, an eruption of voices, some celebrating, others suspicious, all shocked. Ilona felt a weight lift slightly from her chest. It was real. Change was truly happening. But it was Tacton's next statement that sealed the deal. Furthermore, Carrick's will return the crown jewels to the humans. The 5 ships will be returned to Earth as a gesture of good faith and admission of error. Marcus whispered to Elena, Captain, they are giving back the trucks. Elena fought back a smile. Apparently so. In the following weeks, the Galactic Confederation began to take shape. Treaties were drafted, governmental structures proposed. an interspecies judicial system established. Wasn't perfect. There would be problems, disputes, crises, but it was a start. Elena was in her room at Aurora Station when Tacton requested a private meeting. The Carrick's counselor entered, her posture less rigid than before. "Captain Vasquez, I wanted to thank you personally. What you did here facilitating these negotiations saved countless lives." Elena gestured to a reinforced chair designed for Carrick's physiology. "Counselor, honestly, I don't know if I saved lives or just postponed an inevitable conflict." Tacton sat down, a surprisingly graceful movement for such a large creature. "There will always be conflict, but there is a difference between disputes managed through law and total war. You gave us the structure for the former. And the Emperor, how is he handling the loss of power?" Tacton made a sound the translator interpreted as a bitter laugh. "Better than I expected. He is old, Captain. He governed for 200 years. I think he is tired. He officially abdicates next week. He will serve as a ceremonial figure, with no real power." "And you?" "I will run for the elected governing council, but without guarantees. If Carrick's truly becomes a democracy, I need to convince citizens to vote for me." Elena smiled. "Welcome to representative politics. It's frustrating, but necessary," Tacton agreed. She hesitated, then continued. "May I ask a personal question?" "Of course." "Why did you do this? Your species had nothing to gain by helping us. In fact, galactic chaos could benefit Earth. While others fought, humans could expand unopposed." Elena considered the question carefully. Because in the long run, a galaxy at war benefits no one. Trade collapses, technology stagnates, lives are wasted. And because, honestly, humans learned a hard lesson in our own history. Empires based on domination always fall. Better to build something sustainable from the start. "Pragmatic idealism," Tacton observed. "Exactly. We do the right thing because it's smart, not just because it's moral." The counselor stood up to leave, but stopped at the door. "Captain, one last thing. The crown jewels. When we inspect them before returning them, what will we find?" Elena smiled. "Tractors. Lots of tractors. Irrigation systems, water purifiers, maybe some generators. All obsolete by current standards, but functional. They could probably equip a small colony if someone wanted 300-year-old technology." Tacton made that bitter laugh sound again. "We fought 300 years over obsolete farm equipment. Our historians will never forgive us." "Perhaps they shouldn't," Elena replied softly, "but they can learn." 2 weeks later, the Resilience departed from Aurora. The Galactic Confederation was officially founded. 53 signatory species, including Carrick's. A constitution drafted. The first Confederate Council scheduled for election in 6 months. It wasn't perfect. Some species refused to participate. Some Carrick systems declared total independence and were allowed to leave without conflict. There would be challenges, crises, moments where the fragile structure would be tested. But it was a start. As Earth appeared on the main viewing screen, growing from a blue dot to a vibrant sphere, Marcus approached Elena. "Captain, message from Earth. The Security Council is organizing a reception ceremony. They want to celebrate our role in preventing a galactic war." Elena sighed. "Of course they do. Politics never rests." "There's more. The 5 cargo ships arrive in 3 days. Carrick sent them with a ceremonial escort. Apparently they want to make a big show of returning them." Eleanor couldn't help but laugh. So obsolete trucks will have a galactic empire's honor guard. The irony is perfect. The Resilience entered Earth orbit 12 hours later. Elena stood at the observation window, looking at the planet humanity called home. So small compared to Dominia Prime. So ordinary compared to the exotic worlds she had seen. But it was theirs, and in a way, Earth's imperfection, its refusal to conform to ordered standards, reflected something fundamental about humanity. "Captain," Saranya approached, "I just received a preliminary analysis report. The Confederation is stable for now, but there are tensions. Some Carrick systems resist democratization. Some conquered species demand reparations beyond what was agreed." "There will always be problems," Elena replied. "The question is whether we have the structure to deal with them without war." "And do we?" Elena looked at the stars beyond Earth, where trillions of beings now shared a common government. Fragile, but real. "We'll find out. But Saranya, for the first time, we have a chance. And sometimes, a chance is all we need." 3 days later, the ceremony for the return of the crown jewels took place in Earth orbit, broadcast throughout the galaxy, watched by billions. The 5 ancient cargo ships emerged from superluminal space, escorted by gleaming Carix cruisers. The comparison was almost cruel. The cruisers, sleek and lethal, shining with advanced technology, the cargo ships, cylindrical and practical, marked by centuries in the void. But it was the old ships that mattered. Vecthan, serving as Carrick's emissary, gave a formal speech. "In the name of the people of Carrix and the nascent Galactic Confederation, we return these vessels to humanity. For 300 years, we kept them as trophies of war. Now we recognize the error. They were not weapons of war, but tools of construction. And perhaps that is more appropriate. Because what we build today, this confederation, is a tool for peace, just as these ships were tools for growth." Elena, representing Earth, formally accepted. "We received these ships not as trophies, but as a reminder that misunderstandings can have enormous consequences, and that sometimes our accidental obsolescence changes galaxies in ways we never imagined." The ceremony ended with the ships being towed to lunar orbit, where they would be preserved as a museum. Students from all species could visit them, learning about the mistake that changed galactic history. That night, Elena was alone in her apartment in New York. First time home in months. The city remained the same. People walking, laughing, living their lives unaware that just weeks before, an entire galaxy had been on the brink of war. Her personal communicator glowed, a message from Marcus. "Captain, news from the Confederation. First legal case has been filed. Commercial dispute between Cthari and a Carix colony. Being resolved through arbitration instead of force. It works." Elena smiled, replying, "One dispute at a time, Marcus. One dispute at a time." She looked at the stars through the window. Out there, on worlds she could barely imagine, beings of thousands of different forms were trying something new. Shared government, justice through law, peace through structure. It wasn't perfect, it never would be, but it was possible. And it all started because 300 years ago, someone decided that 5 slow trucks weren't worth the fuel to recover. Sometimes, Elena thought, the most important moments in history are the completely accidental ones. And sometimes, obsolescence is exactly what the universe needs. 5 years later. Elena was at the Museum of Galactic History, built at Lagrange 5 station, between Earth and the Moon. The structure was impressive, designed by architects from 12 different species, each contributing unique cultural elements, but the centerpiece, the attraction that drew visitors from hundreds of systems, was in the Grand Central Hall. The 5 cargo ships, NSC Abundance, NSC Providence, NSC Harvest, NSC Frontier, and NSC Legacy, suspended in anti-gravity fields, dramatically lit, preserved exactly as they were returned. Battle scars still visible on the hulls, defense systems deactivated, but intact, and on the observation platforms around, crowds of alien beings watched in respectful silence. Elena walked slowly around the NSC Abundance, her hand tracing impact marks on the hull, 300 years of combat damage. Each mark represented a battle. These ships were never designed to fight. It's still surreal, isn't it? Elena turned. Vecthan approached, moving with the characteristic grace of the Carix. The former coordinator now served as the Carix ambassador to the Galactic Confederation. Less imposing, more diplomat. Vecthan, I didn't expect to see you here. I brought students from Dominia Prime, first generation, educated under the New Republic. They wanted to see the ships that changed everything. Elena looked at the group of young Carix, observing the exhibition with obvious fascination. They had no memory of the old empire. For them, the Confederation was normal. How is Dominia? Vecthan made a sound the translator identified as a sigh. Changing. Slowly, but changing. The first elected parliament is working better than I feared, worse than I expected. Democracy is complicated. It always is, Elena agreed. But it's better than the alternative. They walked together, passing informational panels describing the Crown Jewels crisis, as historians now called it. Each panel in dozens of languages, ensuring that all species could learn the lesson. You know, Vecthan said, stopping before a display showing the exact moment when the human delegation began to laugh in the amphitheater. Our historians still debate this moment. Some argue it was the most humiliating moment in Carix history. Others say it was the most honest moment. And you? What do you think? Vecthan observed the frozen image of the Emperor, confusion clear even in alien features. I think it was necessary. Carrick's pride needed to break before we could build something better. You, accidentally or not, provided the hammer. A school group of an insectoid species passed, the teacher enthusiastically explaining about automated defense protocols. Elena heard fragments. And look, children, the AI did not distinguish between a coordinated military attack and an attempted approach. To it, everything was a threat to the cargo, so it responded with proportional force. Adapting to each new attack, Elena smiled. That same adaptability that the programmers had included to deal with different types of space debris had been interpreted by Carix as advanced military intelligence. "Captain," a young voice called. Elena turned. One of the Carix students approached, antennae vibrating with nervousness. "Can I ask a question?" "Of course." "Is it true that you didn't know? When you went to Dominia Prime, you didn't know those were your ships?" Elena knelt down to be closer to the student's height. "Absolutely not. When I first saw the ships, it took a moment to recognize them. They were so old, so out of context. When I finally understood, it was complete shock." "And why did you laugh?" Elena considered carefully. "Because it was absurd. I wasn't laughing out of cruelty. I was laughing because the situation was so improbable, so impossible, that laughter was the only response my brain could produce. Your empire fought 300 years against our farm tools. It is objectively ridiculous. The student processed this. Professor Tacton says that humor is sometimes a path to truth. Professor Tacton is correct, Elena replied. Tacton had left active politics 2 years earlier, taking a position as an educator. Apparently, she found more satisfaction teaching than governing. The student thanked her and returned to the group. Vecthon watched with an expression Elena had learned to identify as pride. They are the future, he said, a generation that never knew the Empire. For them, the Confederation is all that has ever existed. And is that good? It is hope. They continued through the museum, passing other exhibits. The founding treaties of the Confederation, signed by 53 species. Holograms of the first sessions of the Confederate Council, often chaotic but functional. Tributes to species that suffered under the old empire. They finally reached the final section, a small room with only 5 objects on display. Tractors, old, rusty, but preserved with reverence. We recovered these from the NSC Providence, Vecthon explained. When we finally opened the ships, we found exactly what you said. Agricultural equipment, terraforming tools, nothing military. Eleanor approached one of the tractors. Simple, robust design, built to last centuries in adverse conditions. And they did last, though in a way the original engineers never imagined. You know what's funny? She said. These tractors probably still work. If someone took them to an agricultural planet, they could plant fields. Tomorrow, we tested them, Vecthon admitted. You are correct. Fusion batteries still charge. Hydraulic systems intact. They are obsolete by modern standards, but functional. Then why not use them? Because they are more valuable here, as a reminder. Construction tools that accidentally dismantled an empire. Elena was about to reply when her personal communicator vibrated. Urgent message from Marcus, now captain of his own ship. Captain Vasquez, developing situation. Kepler 442 system. Territorial dispute between Carix and Sathari colonies escalating. Confederation requesting mediation. They are asking if you are available. Elena sighed. 5 years, and they still called her to mediate crises. She had officially retired from the colonial fleet, but the Confederation frequently requested her services. Vecthon, I need to go. Duty calls. I understand, but before you leave, I wanted to show you something. Vecthon guided her to an adjacent room, not yet open to the public. Inside, a hollow projector showed the entire galaxy, systems illuminated in different colors. Blue for full Confederation members. Green for associated states. Yellow for friendly independence. Red for disputed territories. There was a lot of blue. An immense sea of blue spread across the galaxy. 243 member systems, Vecthon reported, plus 387 associates, constant growth since foundation. And red? Eleanor asked, pointing to scattered scarlet dots. Only 16 active disputes, and all being resolved through legal process, not military. No war in 5 years, Captain. None. Elena felt emotion tighten her throat. It wasn't perfect. There were problems, challenges, but compared to the alternative, the galaxy in total war that could have been, it was a miracle. We did it, she whispered. You did it, Vecthon corrected. Your species, your accidental intervention, gave the galaxy a chance at something better. Eleanor shook her head. It wasn't just us. It was all the species that chose peace over revenge. Chronicles that chose transformation over final destruction. Every member of the Confederation that decides daily to resolve differences through law. Pragmatic idealism, Vecthun quoted, using a term Elena had used years before. Exactly. She left the museum an hour later, her mind already shifting to the crisis in Kepler 442. Another territorial dispute to resolve, another delicate negotiation. The work never ended. But before diving into the work, she allowed herself a moment of reflection. 5 years. 5 years since that day in the amphitheater when the world changed. And looking back, Elena realized that the true lesson was not about obsolete technology or imperial arrogance. It was about humanity. Not humanity as a species, humanity as a quality. The ability to laugh in the face of the absurd, to admit mistakes, to build instead of destroy, to choose hope over despair. Chronicles learned this the hard way. They fought 300 years because pride blinded them to the truth. But when the truth was revealed, they chose change over annihilation. And that choice, more than any technology or military power, defined the future of the galaxy. Elena opened the files on Kepler 442, starting to read. The dispute was complex, involving mineral rights, historical borders, and wounds from past conflict. It would take weeks, maybe months to resolve, but it would be resolved through dialogue, through law, through compromise, because that was the promise of the Confederation, not perfection, just process. And sometimes, process was enough. 3 months later, after successful mediation in Kepler 442, Elena was home on Earth again, this time for a special event, the 5-year anniversary of the Galactic Confederation. Celebrations were happening simultaneously across hundreds of worlds, but the main ceremony was held on Earth in recognition of humanity's foundational role. Elena stood on the stage in Geneva, the seat of the terrestrial government, alongside leaders from dozens of species. Vecthun was there, representing the Chronicles. Tacthon, briefly emerging from retirement. Representatives from the Cythari, the Corthon, Oceania, and dozens of others. When it was her turn to speak, Elena approached the microphone, looking out at the crowd of thousands, humans and aliens mingled together, celebrating as one. 5 years ago, she began, I went to Dominia Prime expecting subjugation, expecting to bow before a power I couldn't possibly challenge. Instead, I discovered that power, built on fear, is fragile. That truth is a more potent weapon than any dreadnought. She paused, letting the words sink in. But I learned something even more critical. I learned that change is possible. That species with histories of conflict can choose cooperation. That an empire can become a confederation. That enemies can become partners. She glanced at Vecthun, who inclined his head in acknowledgement. I won't pretend the Confederation is perfect. We have disputes. We face challenges. There are moments when our very structure is tested, but we have a structure. And that, in itself, is a revolution. So today, we celebrate not just 5 years of the Confederation. We celebrate choice. The choice countless beings made to resolve differences peacefully. The choice the Chronicles made to transform instead of destroy. The choice all of us make every single day to build a better future. Elena looked up at the stars above, and we celebrate 5 obsolete cargo ships that by sheer accident reminded us that sometimes our most humble tools have the deepest impact. That obsolescence can be revolution, and that the future belongs not to the strongest, but to the most adaptable. Applause roared through the plaza, not just from humans, but from every species present, each expressing approval in their own unique way. As she stepped down from the stage, Marcus approached her, now a senior captain and instructor at the Confederation Academy. "Great speech, Captain." "Thanks, Marcus. And stop calling me Captain. I'm retired, remember?" "Once a captain, always a captain," he replied with a grin. "Besides, I've heard the buzz. The Confederation is forming a permanent diplomatic service. They're looking for veterans with mediation experience." Elena sighed. "Marcus, I'm 62 years old. I want gardening and peace." "The gardening will have to wait. The galaxy needs you." And maybe he was right. Maybe there was more work to be done, more disputes to mediate, more bridges to build between species. But for now, for this one night, Elena allowed herself just to be. She watched the celebrations, talked with old friends and new allies, and contemplated the absurd journey that had brought them all here. As night fell and the crowds dispersed, Elena found herself alone again, gazing up at the stars. High above, in lunar orbit, the 5 ancient ships floated in their museum, monuments to improbability. Her comm unit vibrated one last time. A message from Engineer Chen, now the Confederation's Chief of Technology. Elena random thought. Did you know those cargo ships, if they had completed their original mission, would have established agricultural infrastructure on Ross 154b? That colony eventually failed due to lack of equipment. If they had arrived, maybe the colony would have survived. Maybe 100,000 people would still be alive. Elena felt the weight of the observation. "And your point is?" "My point is that history is weird. 5 ships failed to save a colony. But by failing, they accidentally saved the galaxy. Sometimes our failures matter more than our successes." Elena had no answer for that. Just a truth, too profound for simple words. She put away the comm unit and walked slowly home through the streets of Geneva. The city was quiet now, the celebrations over. Only the night wind and the distant sounds of traffic remained. At home, before going to sleep, Elena did something she hadn't done in years. She opened a personal file, old training videos from the Fleet Academy. There, 24 years ago, young cadet Elena Johnson was learning about the first colonial missions. A professor explained the Delta generation ships, how they were sent out and later declared lost. "Engineering failure," the professor was saying. "The Mark I warp drive was unreliable. 5 ships, all lost. An important lesson about testing technology before large-scale deployment." Young Elena took diligent notes, unaware that decades later she would discover those ships hadn't failed. They had just gotten lost, and by getting lost, they changed everything. Elena closed the file, smiling at the irony, accidental obsolescence, a mistake that became a revolution, a failure that saved the galaxy. Sometimes, she thought, as she drifted off to sleep, the most important moments are the ones we never plan for. And sometimes, our most humble tools have the deepest impact. In the depths of space, 5 ships waited in eternal silence. Witnesses to a war they never understood, monuments to a mistake that changed everything, and across hundreds of worlds, beneath alien suns, beings of 1,000 different forms looked up at the same stars and contemplated the same future. Imperfect, challenging, but possible. And all because 300 years ago, someone decided that 5 slow-moving trucks weren't worth the fuel to retrieve. End of story.